welcome to Opening Arguments. This is the Wednesday show. We're not sure what to call it. It's Wildcard Wednesday. I think we'll go back to that. Wildcard Wednesday. I'm Thomas. That over there is real-life immigration attorney Matt Cameron. How are you doing?
Hey, well, I'm happy to talk about my favorite subject, immigration policy, and how New York Times and the Federalist both got it wrong. Lots of wrongness to talk about.
Oh boy. I can't start talking because I'll never stop shouting. So I'm going to just say hello to Lydia. How are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing okay. I have 2 sick children at
so
home.
About this daily article. No, I'm just kidding.
2 sick kids at home. So I'm hoping I make it to the end of this. But if I mysteriously drop out, then now you all know why.
That's not Lydia announcing that we're not living together anymore.
We are. It's just
I also have 2 sick kids.
Yeah.
So really we have 4 when you think about it.
The other pitch I had for this time slot was because it's WCW, and I was like, oh, Women Crush Wednesday. And so that's going to be our Wednesday slot, I think, for OA.
What is that?
Where you post
Explain to people who are old like
your
me.
Woman Crush every Wednesday.
Okay.
Like,
Can you be my
throwback.
Woman Crush?
Yeah, you could just post
Okay,
me
I'll post
every
this.
Wednesday. That's fine.
Posting this video and podcast is my Woman Crush Wednesday.
My Woman Crush is the gray lady, the New York Times.
So, this is unbelievable. I know we always talk about the Daily, but this is not just about the Daily. This is about, and we've been talking a lot about these things. There's been an alternate version of history that's been written into the record books, apparently, about many things. Yeah. And one of them is Biden's open border, that he apparently just threw open the border, let everybody in, and et cetera, et cetera. There's varying degrees of that. I mean, I think Republicans, and I've heard Ben Shapiro they just literally say that, like his open border or whatever.
That he wanted this.
But I don't know if it's because it's working the refs, which is successful, or if it's other biases. But the mainstream centrist Democrat version is not exactly like Biden had an open borders policy, but it's that Biden failed completely on the border. And there was a New York Times article and Daily episode about that. It's blowing my mind. I listened to the Daily episode, no joke, 5 times because I can't get over there's something that just is uniquely disturbing to me about the underlying assumptions of this coverage that I just don't know if the reporters are aware of it. Like I can't tell if they're aware of the underlying assumptions they're making. And it's very important because the assumptions that they're making, sort of the unsaid assumptions, are really driving the whole story. Like there isn't really a story, or it's drastically different if you just have different underlying assumptions. But this is supposed to be the news, the neutral news. That shouldn't really be going on to this degree. And I am really upset about it. Like I said, I've listened to it a ton. I can't stop thinking about it. And we have an immigration expert here in Lydia. So she's going to...
Get ready. All right. Here we go, folks.
So it's great to have an actual expert in Matt who does this work day in, day out. So it'll be great to get a breakdown from someone who actually knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, I'm really glad to hear that this hit you the way that it hit me, because as somebody who is actually an expert in border policy and has taught this stuff, I mean, I didn't really have to study that much for this episode, to be honest, because this is stuff I talk about and think about every day. And as soon as I saw the headline, my heart sank about what it was going to be about. And then I listened to it and I read the story, and I just can't believe that they can't just try to scratch the surface about what was actually going on during the Biden term with immigration. Like, it's so much more complicated than anything they're saying here. As you said, the fundamental framing of this is wrong. The way that they talk about it is wrong. And not just because I don't agree with it, and not because I'm trying to defend Biden, because I actually think Biden was too hard, if anything, on immigration policy. But we'll get there.
I just want to go through the entire episode. I just want to hit play. Go through the Daily episode. I know we're not going to.
I'm here for it.
What my heart wants to do.
We don't have that kind of time. Yeah.
Now, Biden lost Americans' faith in immigration. So not just a segment of Americans, just all Americans. And the subheading there, President Joseph R. Biden Jr. and his top advisors rejected recommendations that could have eased the border crisis that helped return Donald J. Trump to the White House.
So many presumptions in those headlines.
Yeah.
So many presumptions.
It's already off the bat. But I'm glad that we also have the amazingly named, and this is entirely Matt, amuse douche. We really need that starter before we get going on this, because this is outrageous. But first, we've got to thank our patrons. I'm so glad this is back. We get to get new and exciting and possibly counterfeit palindromes each and every week. So these are the amazing supporters at patreon.com/law who make this show happen. We thank our Hall of Famers. Those are the folks who pledge at that $5 level and above for at least a month. We thank them each and every week here on Wildcard Wednesday or
Women Crush Wednesday. Yes.
And we'll do it in thirds here with our break. So we'll start with our first break. I want to thank Veterinary for America 2028, One Man, One Vote, Alec, Unremarkable, Amina, Donna Treadaway, Mother of Harridans, Protect Trans Kids, Deep Space Nine was the best Star Trek, Mike Lipinski, Pause, a sap. I like that because it's like, it's so basic. It's like 1, 2, 3, like 7 letters.
Yeah.
You're sort of building up the palindromes, starting from the basics.
Mhm,
You know, you got to start small, you know, and then maybe you develop different words that work.
I like that it also gives you like action, right? Like it feels like something like it's blocking that I could do on stage. Pause, like.
Oh, it's PA''S.
Oh, okay.
A sap, because their paw is a sap.
Oh, yeah. All right.
So it's very basic,
mind.
but you know, I feel like it's a good start.
Okay. Yes.
Cyanitis, normalized bidirectional spooning. Fourth Circuit attorney reluctantly changing her font. Charlie Kelly, attorney at Bird Law. Apprentice of Adventure, probably a real person. Nick Fish, unfrozen caveman lawyer. And how many chunks would a chunk hunk thunk if a chunk hunk could thunk chunks?
Yep. There you go.
You two can make us say ridiculous things
Make
and
Thomas
talk about
say ridiculous things.
and talk about the palindromes and the virtues thereof if you pledge at patreon.com/law. So we'll take our first break and then we'll get into it. All right. So the aforementioned amuse douche. Give it to us, Matt.
This is a classic. This is an absolute stone cold immediate classic. This is from Tina Peters' lawyer. You might remember Tina Peters was convicted in Colorado, and this is important, state court for election-related violations because she got into some voting machines, did some stuff she wasn't supposed to do because she was a true believer and remains a true believer.
This was the one that had the viral video of the judge just absolutely going after, right?
I would love to cover that trial. There's a lot of fun stuff at that trial. I've been trying to get
that for gavel
recordings.
gavel.
I'm gonna say,
Yes.
do we need to find that clip?
So this is an email from her attorney because you might remember within the last few days, Donald Trump issued a full and unconditional pardon to Tina Peters, which we might as well. I think opening arguments could pardon her just as effectively.
Yeah,
basically
we have the same legal authority,
thing, right? Yeah.
but we wouldn't do that because she is in fact guilty of election-related violations. But here's what her lawyer has to say about how Colorado needs to honor that pardon. It is quite a letter.
Man,
This should
I'm
really
trying
just
to
be
find the video.
I wanted to see if there's just a short version.
A judge chuckles at a defendant in court.
It's not funny. My life is on the line here, Your Honor.
This was the contentious exchange between Judge Matthew Barrett and defendant, former Mesa County, Colorado clerk Tina Peters.
No, you're the one who's making this allegation that one,
It's
I think
not
is
an
funny, and
allegation.
two, that I know it's true. You're saying that as if I believe you, and I did not say that. That is why I made the sound, because it's insulting to me for you to just put that in a record in front of all of these people that I believe something to be true.
Okay, and I apologize for that.
A jury found Peters guilty of several charges, including attempting to influence a public servant during the 2020 presidential race.
Let's go of me.
30 seconds.
Go of me.
This is body cam video of her arrest
Man,
in
I
February
didn't
of
remember the
2022.
arrest. She hit the
During
full
the
Karen.
sentencing hearing, Peters cried, addressing the judge.
I'm not a criminal, and I don't deserve to go into a prison where other people have committed heinous crimes. The only crime that I did, and some people have said I'm not
Loving Trump
remorseful.
too
Yes, I'm remorseful. Yes, sir.
She was sentenced to 9 years in prison.
Wow.
This is Inside Edition Digital.
Good.
I mean, she
9
hacked voting
years.
machines.
Yeah.
She tampered with voting machines.
She tampered with voting machines. Wow.
The thing that they say that we've been doing throughout the country, yes.
Yeah, was that the one where she said she did it to like prove that they?
Yeah. Doesn't really matter why you did it. It
I
turns
robbed
out.
the bank to prove that the security was lax.
Yeah, that's right.
I want to point out before we move on to the email itself that the YouTube algorithm thought that the next video we would be interested in was like 14 of the wildest and strangest arrests caught on camera, and someone was wearing like a Chewbacca mask. So just, folks on
Which
YouTube
is way
saw
more
this,
dignified
but
than Tina Peters.
I just thought it was so good. So we have this email to Warden Stansel. And this is from Tina Peters' lawyer, correct, Matt?
John Case.
All right. Dear Warden Stansel, On December 5th, 2025, President Donald J. Trump issued a full and unconditional pardon to my client, Tina M. Peters. At approximately 5:55 p.m. on December 12th, 2025, I personally served a copy of the presidential pardon on armed DOC staff at the La Vista Correctional Facility and requested that they release Mrs. Peters.
It must have been so funny.
I have this piece of paper that says release a prisoner. Do it.
Signed by
Wait.
the president, you understand.
What?
Can we get can I FOIA correctional facility
Video?
video?
Yeah. That'd be
Can I
very
get
funny.
this?
I do want to see this.
I
Yeah.
wish.
Okay.
I like how he mentions they're armed, like he was taking such
Yeah.
a risk by walking up.
Like they're just going to shoot him
Yeah.
on sight. Instead of releasing Mrs. Peters as required by federal
They
law,
laughed at me.
DOC personnel stated that they would not comply with President Trump's pardon. Their refusal is categorically unlawful. A presidential pardon is self-executing and immediately terminates all legal authority for continued custody. Your refusal to release Mrs. Peters is not a clerical delay. It is a willful deprivation of liberty under color of law in direct violation of 18 U.S.C. 242, subsection 242. If more than one DOC employee acted in concert to block her release, it further constitutes a conspiracy to deprive rights under 18 U.S.C. subsection 241. I expect Mrs. Peters to be released immediately. If she is not, her attorneys will pursue all available civil and criminal remedies against every state officer or official who knowingly participated in obstructing the enforcement of a presidential pardon. Please provide written confirmation without delay identifying the precise time Mrs. Peters will be released in order to create a plan to safely receive her. Respectfully, John Case.
So this is someone who is a lawyer or used to be until they should be
Practices
terminated.
law. I did see that one of her lawyers got the idea that Trump could pardon her from the movie Lincoln.
Oh, no.
And they went looking to the Constitution, and they found that the president can pardon crimes against the United States, which of course means, the country. But they decided that means, states. So they decided that it should extend to the states, even though it has never been
Weird.
interpreted that way.
Oh, my gosh.
I don't know where that was in the movie Lincoln, but
Sort of like how the president of the United States is also like the president of California.
Nebraska. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Like a
Everything he
weird,
says
like
goes.
sovereign citizen sort of
Loophole.
reverse
that is
reinterpretation.
really funny.
Yeah.
It's quite a letter.
I think it's funny. I think it's funny to try. I like the first try. Like
Swing for it.
worth the try. Like if it was like my family, if I was a lawyer, no, that's embarrassing. You should not be doing anything like that. But if it was like a family member, I was like, it's like worth a try. Hey, by the power vested in this piece of paper, release her.
22
Now,
USC
forthwith.
242. Sure.
Yeah.
That'll do it.
And then the guy's like, shoot, I was okay with the 242 violation, but a 241 as well? Oh, man.
Oh, boy.
Got to think
Gonna
about
carry
that.
some serious time. I'm going to have to rest myself. I'm going to have to lock myself into this prison that I'm guarding.
Man, crazy. So she remains there to this day, I take it, Matt.
She has not been released despite the presidential pardon of her state offense.
Wow.
And here we are. So
Wow.
Amazing.
I was going to say
So
good luck, but not really.
Yeah.
armed DOC staff. So that's state. It's not like I was trying to figure out like why.
Yeah.
They just don't understand.
It's just cuz. That's what he's saying.
Man.
Because the president signed it, she should be out.
Wow.
That's crazy.
That's not how it works.
This really should be sent to the bar, honestly. I mean,
Yeah.
you know this is frivolous. You have to know that.
Yeah.
Well, what are the options, Matt? You know when you're lying, or you're that bad of a lawyer
Right.
that you shouldn't be practicing.
Yeah.
If you don't understand this particular thing,
Very basic.
you should not be doing
concept.
law.
Especially like in criminal law too. Like I feel like that's a big red flag.
When he signs off John Case PC, I'm just hoping that means personal computer and this is AI.
He is a professional corporation in himself, I guess. I don't know. Colorado registration 2431.
Professional corporation?
Yeah.
Is that what?
Yeah. This
Really?
came up the other week too. The PC. Yeah.
It
patron
did.
name.
Yeah.
Oh, but I think we didn't know it then, and I don't remember.
Yeah. They chimed in on Patreon.
It's not really how we do it here.
Explaining themselves. So,
Huh.
yeah.
So it is like a normal lawyer thing somewhere?
Yeah, not usually after your name. It'd usually be like, John Case and Associates or, but I guess you can be a PC under yourself. Sure.
Yeah, his email seems to be brief at John Case Law. So if it's John Case Law,
Interesting.
that's really funny. I love the entire, that whole thing. It continues to be let me speak to the manager forever. And it's so great that this person is one of the few people who faced consequences and didn't get pardoned for it. It's nice.
And you
well,
heard
did get pardoned, but couldn't get pardoned.
You hear what she said at the sentencing hearing, like, you're going to put me in with criminals, with people who
Yeah.
did crimes. Like,
Common criminals,
I just hacked a voting machine.
perjurers, and
Tried to
thief
convince
knaves. I can't be among them. I'm a white lady. I can't do anything wrong. Yeah, it's
Pretty
you're
much.
a criminal, man. 9 years is a lot. That's a
I
lot.
know. I was shocked when I heard that on the clip. 9 years.
But part of it that she's a piece of shit and wasn't remorseful and did, like, I feel like, do you think she could have gotten a better result if she wasn't a piece of shit and had a better lawyer, maybe?
Took no responsibility and went down with the Trump ship. Yeah. So,
well, boy, that and the lesson is Trump always remembers, and you're fine now. You're going to be totally fine. He did a pardon, so you're fine. That's good. He remembers loyalty and he values it, and you're going to be A-okay in prison with the common thieves.
Man.
for your service.
Well, good times. All right. Well, that was a fun amuse douche, and now I am ready for a whole lot of douche.
Yeah.
In this New York Times article. But first, I better quickly thank our middle frame of patrons. We're going to thank A Negative Phenomenon, David Souther, AI, let's call... Oh, wait, hold on. No, not AI. I'm so used to seeing AI. Al, let's Della call Ed Stella. Okay, sure. These are getting... There's got to be better palindromes than this. Like, I'm sorry. Like, there are some good ones, right? Are they just trying to go off the beaten path?
Yeah, maybe.
You got to fight for your right to ex parte. Jay Sank, council member-elect vehicular manslaughter, not to be confused with New York Penal Code 125.12. That's so awesome, by the way, that I'm still blown away that the patron who we've seen, we've hung out with, got elected to a council, like it was a city council or something.
Yep.
That's amazing. I'm
Cool.
still in disbelief.
So
That's
proud.
awesome. And all the vehicular murder he's committed before that didn't seem to affect him. We live in a new era. You don't have to be ashamed of your vehicular
Manslaughter.
Yeah, manslaughter. Cavalry, I am a palindrome, mordni lapamai.
Oh, no.
That was a good joke. They just like forced it. Even a blind squirrel can find these chunks. Today's episode is brought to you by the letter. Oh, I think it's from the last one where we couldn't read the symbol or whatever.
Yeah, it's object.
I think they're effing with us now. Yeah, it's something weird. But I like it. Thomas Freeman, Cajun Killer, Fraud Fishy Hates Everything, Chris Simpson, Gavelhead Chucking Away, E.T., and Mark Schultz.
Nice.
All right. And, well, you know what? I'm going to say Mark Schulz. I had a high school
Oh.
teacher, and who was also the wrestling coach, who didn't have a T in his name like that, Mark Schulz. And the first day of class, he's like, if there's no T, everyone says Schultz. There's no T. It's Schulz. And he's a nice guy. He was kind of being goofy. And he kind of made a big deal about it. He talked about like the origin of his name. I was like, okay. And then like the phone rang and he goes, Jan Schultz, like right, just like totally oblivious. Like it wasn't intended. Like he just like said Schultz on the phone because he was so used to people calling him that. It was like after he just gave us that. So Mark Schulz, if that is your real name, thank you for being a patron.
Nice.
All right, Matt, where do we begin? Should I just let you begin, or
I'd like to say a few things as we get into this. So we're not going to read the whole article from the New York Times. Usually the deal when we're doing these is we're responding to bad writing and bad writers. And, this is the New York Times. It is still quality writing and journalism. It's a bloated article. It's way too long. It's not worth reading all of it. But the problem that we have here is with the framing and the setup. And I want to say up front that this is not a defense of Joe Biden as an immigration attorney. And I know that many of my colleagues agree. I actually think that Biden was in many ways too harsh on the border. I think that's going to sound very strange to a lot of people who buy the framing here that the New York Times is presenting and that has generally become sort of a gospel. And one of the only points I think they do make here is that they did try to play both sides in a way that didn't work for either side. That is true.
Right.
And Obama tried to do the same thing. But I'm going to say up front that during his term, Joe Biden was faced with an impossible choice and just an impossible series of things, just a really unfortunate combination of circumstances that I don't think any president, no matter how determined or competent or humane or fascist, frankly, could have solved. Like there was no answer for this.
Well, the article is written from the perspective that the answer was fascism,
Right.
and he just didn't reach.
Right. If he'd
that
only done
fast enough.
fascism.
Yeah,
Right.
if he'd only
Right.
done iron-fisted fascism faster,
Right.
that is the assumption of the article.
Right. And it also, the assumption seems to be that the record numbers of people, which were not necessarily a record for the entire term, there's a brief spike there, but that those people had something to do with his policies, which they demonstrably did not. So let's just start maybe with the headline and kind of work down. If you want to play some of the daily piece, we could also set that up.
Yeah, so this was a longer article and a daily episode. The daily episode is an interview with the writer of the article. I'm so mad about this. I did both. I read the whole article, and it has additional annoying stuff in it that I might want to try to remember to get to. So yeah, maybe we'll hit play on this daily article. 1X blows my mind. I can't believe I have to listen to stuff in 1X. It only happens when we play stuff on the show. And then, because if I did it on 1.5, then the people listening to this fast, it would be like, Matt, what would that be? 1.5 times 1. No, I'm sorry.
I pity anybody who listens to me faster. But
that's me doing some workplace harassment. Sorry, Matt.
I can take.
All right. Here's the framing here. Oh my
Today,
God, this is slow.
As Democrats debate how to counter President Trump's aggressive crackdown on immigration and try to win back voters with their own vision, we look back at why former President Biden let the border get so out of control in the first place, and how he underestimated just how much the problem would come to define his presidency. My colleague, Chris Flavelle, takes us into his investigation of how Biden fumbled the issue of immigration and what his party can learn from his missteps.
Drummer isn't even that good.
It's
on
Monday, December 15th.
I thought the drummer was just killing it, but it's just like, I could play that. That's Ringo. Went from
when
Black
he's 85,
Sabbath to
yeah.
Chris, you've spent much of this fall taking a forensic look back at what
going?
many
Forensic.
consider to be one of the Biden administration's
hear
biggest failures, its immigration policy.
Oh, hey, we got the transcript.
Under Biden, immigration at the border surged to record numbers. Many say it costs Democrats the election in 2024 and set the stage for the immigration crackdown that we're in the middle of right now. I want to just start by asking, why look back on that policy in this moment, a year after Biden left office?
Great question.
So this moment looks a whole lot like 2020, right? You've got President Trump in the White House enacting really aggressive strategies in terms of arrests and deportations of migrants. You've got really, really strong anger from Democrats and others in response to those policies. And you've got Democrats as a party trying to figure out what position to take. That's exactly what was happening in 2020 as Joe Biden was first campaigning for the presidency and then deciding after winning what to do as president. He responded.
All right, I'll pause there. This, as amazing and well-funded as the New York Times is, I can't have the transcript up and pause it. I have to close the transcript,
Wow.
lose my spot, hit pause. Cool. Anyway, I'll pause there, Matt.
The whole setup of it's so, okay. She's asking, well, why are we talking about this now? And he comes up with this bullshit thing about how, well, this is kind of like 2020 where they were cracking down. Now, of course, during the pandemic, President Trump, to be clear, you can't close the American border. There is no giant lever in the basement of the White House that says order that you can throw. That's the way they talk about it, right? Just opening and closing, like shutting down the government, which we can't even shut down the government anymore, it turns out, because most of it's still open when we shut it down. But just a few facts before we begin here, because there's two different things this piece is talking about. They're talking about the politics of it, which are very different, and the reality of it, and they're misreporting the reality part. I think they're getting the politics more or less correct. I think that it's true to say that the Biden administration did not have a clear message. Democrats generally don't have very clear messages on immigration. They can be kind of sclerotic and all over the place. But accepting the framing of the reality that the border was open or that there was an unprecedented surge because of anything that Biden did, let me just give you a couple of facts. These are just straight up facts that you can look up. Undocumented immigration crossing the border had already increased to a 21-year high before Biden entered office. He immediately started increasing expulsions from his first day. He tripled interior detention interior detention and increased border detention by 12. Increased air removal flights by 55% over 2020 levels. He negotiated more expulsion deals with foreign countries than Trump did had to take people back. He got Mexico to crack down on illegal migration much more than Trump ever did. He expelled or removed 3.3 million border crossers, 3 times as many as Trump. He even managed to remove a similar percentage of crossers as Trump's 4 years, which is pretty impressive given the numbers that increased, the way they increased. So this, framing from the beginning that people were just pouring across and Biden did nothing to start with is not true. And it's one thing that you've heard us complain about as advocates, and one thing we talked about last year when we talked about the asylum policies that Biden was finally forced to enact. But that's just in terms of the realities of how Biden responded. The realities of the people crossing the border are also very frustrating because Trump's policies were illegal. And at no point does the New York Times acknowledge that Trump did things that were actually illegal when Biden was trying to follow the law. I would think that
so
would
you're
be
talking
relevant.
Trump 1, like leading in. Okay.
Yeah. The stuff that set this up, because and the pandemic also had a lot to do with all of
that
this.
was a huge part of it, right?
Huge factor, because you have not only Title 42, which was their excuse to close the border basically as a public health thing. The only place Republicans cared about public health and when it came to COVID was closing the border, right? But then you also had the fact that these countries were suffering pretty badly, that all kinds of gang problems increased, crime increased, people lost their jobs. There was all the kind of economic stuff you'd expect. And I will be honest, I met a lot of economic migrants during that time that came up in those couple of years. We didn't take those cases because they weren't asylum claims. But there were a lot more. I've never seen more economic migrants come than during those times. I have to be honest about that. But that's to be expected. There was a lot of economic problems. And there were lockdowns that lifted that allowed people to come through these countries. And there were any number of other policy things we can talk about as well. But it was a huge bucket of things, a combination of things that Biden walked into that had nothing to do with Joe Biden at all. And again, I'm not here to defend Joe Biden. None of us are. That's not the purpose of this. I want to tell you that this is just such a simplistic, baby-brained view to say, well, how did he lose Americans' faith in immigration? And the only part of this I agree with is that he didn't do a very good job of explaining himself. We could pull up the article if you want to take a look at it a little more granular here.
You want to do the article or you want to do
either way.
Let's listen to how they set it up here.
As Joe Biden was first campaigning for the presidency and then deciding after winning what to do as president, he responded to those same pressures by charting a really aggressively counter campaign, being the anti-Trump. And we saw, with the benefit of hindsight, what the result was.
For example.
Huge surge in border encounters, massive shift in public opinion against Democrats, and ultimately Donald Trump returning to the White House again on a campaign against migrants and an open border. So I think the question of why did things go so badly and what did Democrats learn is actually really relevant right now, and it's very timely, because that question of what does the party stand for and what do Americans want for the border and immigration remains fundamentally unresolved. So that's why I went back and spent months looking at this question of why did Biden and his close aides make the decisions they did? And what I found was, surprisingly, a lot of those mistakes and blowback was preordained and warned, and they did it anyway.
Preordained how? What do you mean by that?
So let's go back to the summer of 2020. You're now approaching the height of the campaign. Joe Biden is seeking the presidency on a platform of being much more welcoming towards immigrants. As this is happening, I learned, some of his advisors began circulating a memo with a really important warning. This memo, which we got a copy of, said that combined with everything else that was going on, the pent-up demand for migration under Trump, the economic devastation from COVID, on top of that, Mr. Biden's own promises and his more welcoming tone, they warned, could produce a really serious surge in border crossings. And reading that language today, it's remarkable how on the nose it was. That memo said, quote, at the U.S. border, a potential surge could create chaos and a humanitarian crisis, overwhelm processing capacities, and imperil the agenda of the new administration. These warnings did not go over well with Biden's campaign team, but these advisors kept on raising this through the ranks of the organization until finally, after Biden had won election, he got a briefing from the people who worked on this memo. And I'm told during that briefing that the president-elect and Kamala Harris, the vice president-elect, seemed to grasp that this was a problem, but they wound up ignoring those recommendations to change course.
Just so I make sure I understand this, you're saying that very early on, even before Biden won, there were advisors who wrote this memo, who eventually carried out this briefing, warning about the perils of immediately doing everything he said he would during the campaign. But Biden and Harris ignored them. Explain why.
Yeah, look, the why is epic, right? The first part of the why is politics. It's worth remembering what the mood was in 2020. This was the height of Black Lives Matter. This was a moment in American history when there's a real belief, especially among Democrats, that there was a racial reckoning underway. And it seems as though the political calculus was They couldn't turn their back on that. They couldn't, in that atmosphere, decide they would get a little more aggressive on border enforcement. That's the external why. The internal why, the staffing choices in the Biden administration early on reflected this idea that it was.
All right. I can't handle them talking that slowly.
Yeah.
I don't know how anyone could ever do it. So let's contrast that with what Matt said. They paint the picture and they go on. I could also maybe pull some quotes here and just speak them here. The way they set it up, as a listener of that podcast, I get the idea that they were warned that all this border stuff could happen. And they said, don't really care. Not going to do anything about it.
Or didn't even say anything. Ignored is
really
the word that they use over and over.
Never mind that whoever these sources are, sounds like they would have their reasons for saying, yeah, I warned him. I was right about everything and he didn't listen. Mm-hmm. Whoever his sources are, he's not talking to Biden. Who knows how well they're representing that. But the point is, nothing was done. And then there was this open border, essentially, is the impression you're given.
Right. And he's really focused on this memo and this idea that he ignored, and doesn't really even say what the memo was telling him to do. It was just saying this is going to be a problem.
Yeah.
And this isn't like George W. Bush ignoring, Al-Qaeda determined to strike in the United States. Everybody knew that there was going to be a surge in migration after the pandemic had ceased, after things had basically calmed down. Everybody knew that when you lifted the illegal remain in Mexico policy, which is a big part of this, when you lifted the Title 42 extension, which had been going on, and the Title 42 continued to be extended because Republican attorneys general demanded it and got the court to continue to extend it even when it wasn't necessary. And I want to talk just legally for a moment about both those things, because that's what basically what they're warning in this memo is these two policies are going to start to change the way that everything happens. I'm going to send you a couple of graphics here that might help to illustrate this a little better. So here's, first of all, let's start with the first one I just sent you on border encounters. Now, the reporter uses the word encounters several times. There's a big difference between encounters and apprehensions and what they call gotaways. These are all different things.
Right.
But encounters includes recidivists, includes people that re-enter. And it was very easy to re-enter with the Title 42 because basically they would just toss you back across the border without registering it as deportation, which meant that you would not be prosecuted the way that you would be now under Trump or even under Biden. Because you could actually become prosecuted criminally for re-entering, but basically you got a freebie when you came back in. So I just want to show you this, first of all, a couple of graphics. And some of this is taken from Cato, some of it is taken from the National Immigration Council. Both of these institutes are very good on these things. But there's so much missing. There's so much context missing from the story because they're accepting the framing of the idea that Biden opened the border. There's this, okay, so we'll check out overall apprehensions in the lighter blue, and then recidivism adjusted for the unique apprehensions. So there's at least something like a 25% difference there because that's the recidivists, right? So even that spike in 2021. Now, again, that spike in 2021 was also caused not just by the end of COVID, of course, or at least by COVID reducing and a lot of people leaving their countries after lockdowns ended or when it was safe, when it was able to come in, or because they lost their jobs or their economies fell apart or whatever it was. So there's all kinds of extrinsic factors there. Mexico also, with the Remain in Mexico program, Joe Biden was determined to end it because it was definitely illegal. Court wouldn't let him end it. And this is the policy that required asylum seekers to remain in Mexico while they process their claims, which is very dangerous. I went down there during that period and I saw the effects of it. Met a lot of people that were suffering from it because they were targets for gang violence because they were waiting there on the border. Everybody knew that they were not Mexican. And then also the fact that Mexico refused, once we entered Remain in Mexico, they refused to reinstate their cooperation agreement with us to actually even take people back. So even once a court, Matthew Kaczmarek of mifepristone fame, found that Remain in Mexico was legal, but he couldn't reinstate it because the Mexican government wouldn't agree to it. So even if the court had ordered it reinstated, they knew they couldn't do anything because it requires bilateral agreement.
Right.
So this program that had kept a lot of people over the border and from coming in has ended. Title 42 has ended. And this policy of basically just tossing people back over the border and then not counting them, as reentries when they come back and encountering the recidivism. Now, again, this allowed for all kinds of lying with statistics because you heard these numbers about like 10 million people entered during Biden. That's just not true. There was a lot of reentries. Maybe at least 25% of that was reentries. There were unprecedented numbers, but there are a lot of different reasons for that. And it wasn't because they were getting here and getting free stuff or being treated much differently than they had been. And also Biden, let's look at another number here. We can look at the next chart down as Title 42 expulsions. So you can just see the giant numbers here until the program ended. So this is a unique program that had never been done in American history, where we closed the border essentially. I mean, again, you can't close the border, but we shut down asylum claims and basically justified it as a public health emergency and tossed people back in record numbers all through this time. And then when that program ended, there was a big concern there'd be another spike. But for various reasons, there was not, because a lot of the people who were going to come had come anyway. There was also, at that time, unfortunately, there were a lot of people making a lot of money off of human trafficking who were putting out a lot of information about what would happen if you got here and how easy it was. And there was unprecedented access to the internet and to TikTok and to things that were telling people, unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation going around as well. Let's look at another one. The next chart I sent you, and I think this is also from Cato, which really, Cato has its own issues. But is really good on immigration because they are actually libertarians, to their credit. They are open border libertarians. Biden was expelling people in record numbers. I mean, this is really, people do not understand the degree to which the Biden administration was carrying out border enforcement. There's another issue as well, which is that a lot of the people that were coming during that time were from Venezuela and from Cuba, places that will not take their people back.
Right.
So you have, and Border Patrol acknowledged this, even when they're complaining about Biden. They said that there's nothing they can do about the fact, and we can't hold them indefinitely. So the yellow is Title 42 expulsions, right, under the public health thing. And then there's a dark blue at the bottom there, which is the Remain in Mexico, which is actually pretty minimal compared to these massive Title 42 expulsions. Right. And then the lighter color there is just regular deportations at the border. Okay. So massive numbers. So more people were expelled in any given month than were ever in the Remain in Mexico program that Trump had used to try to control things.
That's what I find confusing. And they even say it at some point in the podcast where they're like, well, but if you look at the numbers, there was a record number of expulsions.
Right.
And I'm like, well, what? Sorry, what? Isn't that
what's
the
the
thing
issue?
that you're supposed, like, they're wanting you to do? Like, the assumption is that he didn't do enough.
Right.
And it's an open border. And the evidence of that is, look at all these people we expelled.
Right.
How is that? I'm losing my mind. I almost maybe need to get to it in the podcast because it's like the podcast goes on to kind of talk about how, he was physically uncomfortable talking about it, the biggest criticism. And I think, like you said, some of this is right. There wasn't a coherent thing. But okay, just to make sure I have the actual facts based on what you're saying. And this makes a lot of sense to me. Trump was doing illegal fascist things. And some people predicted, hey, once the horrible fascist who did family separations is out of office and someone who's not that is in office, more people could try to come. And they didn't, and maybe they anticipated with COVID too, I don't know. But one way or the other, they're saying, hey, there's going to be a surge at the border. And it seems like, sure, there was a surge at the border. That, there's record numbers, as you say. But like, to your point, what was he supposed to do about that? The implication is he needed to do the fascism. That really is, like, in the end, if you listen to this whole thing, if you read the whole article, it's about, it took Biden too long to do the fascism.
That's the point they make.
That is what the thing is.
And he was too welcoming.
He was too welcoming.
Said nice things.
And I think you can tell that at the very beginning of the article, because the way that it leads off in the full piece is Mr. Biden had pledged to treat unauthorized immigrants more humanely than President Donald J. Trump. So like he's saying from the beginning, the issue, Biden's mistake, was that he was pledging to be too compassionate. That's the issue. So it makes sense that the final result of the article in the podcast is that he didn't do enough fascism quickly enough.
Let's go to this part here. So I'm going to start back here on the podcast. I skipped ahead a bit.
Fascinating. Like, he was physically uncomfortable talking about it. But it sounds like, to the extent that he was thinking about the issue, he does have sympathy with the side that believes there's a moral imperative to reversing the signature pieces of Trump's immigration crackdown. And we know that once in office, that's exactly what Biden does. So describe that. Describe what happened.
Yeah. Joe Biden, the first day he was in the White House, made good on what he had promised to do during the campaign. He reversed almost all of Trump's signature policies. He
illegal
said he would stop building the wall.
Yeah.
He dramatically reduced the scope of arrests.
I just want to note something. When we talk about how the border led to Trump and the blah, 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 what about the fact that he won election on these promises and then did them? Like, why is that not part of it? He wins that's an aside. So he won elections and he promised to do, he promised to do not fascism like a dork.
And people voted for him.
He followed through on his promises that won in the election. When Trump wins, even when he loses the popular vote, when he wins, he has a giant mandate and he should do whatever the fuck he wants. When our side wins, when Democrats win, it's only by the skin of their teeth. And it's like, well, they barely got through it and everyone hates them, but I guess we'll let them do stuff. And then everything they do is wrong. But you could just as easily say Biden was responding to he won the election. He won the election knowing, and the public knew that Trump was doing illegal fascist stuff about immigration, and Biden promised to do not that, and he won. So you could take this New York Times bullshit, fake, objective thing, and you could say, you present it that way. So the voters wanted this, and they elected Biden, and he did what they wanted. But then what happened? You could present it from that angle in just as a quote unquote objective a way as this is. But they don't do that because the whole underlying thing is the fascism. It was the right way to do it.
Yeah, that's what they wanted.
He stopped sending
Let me
kids
go back just to
inside the
make sure we
country
get that.
full of Trump's signature policies. He said he would stop building the wall. He dramatically reduced the scope of arrests inside the country for migrants. He ended or tried to end what they call the Remain in Mexico policy, forcing migrants to wait while their cases were heard. He stopped sending kids back over the border under the public health rules for COVID. And he announced that he would put a halt on deportations for 100 days.
That all sounds great.
Right. And
promises
what
made, promises
followed
kept.
From signaling a more welcoming stance toward migrants was, in fact, a huge surge at the border.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think those
it was
people
a
already planning
disaster
on coming
almost
anyway.
immediately.
Yeah. How much do you get a sense, Matt? You know these folks. You actually interact with people, with migrants. I get that there is definitely a disincentive effect by the fascism for sure, and a little bit of an incentive from learning that not a fascist is going to be in control. How much of that, though, do you think is really motivating these decisions? Because it feels like if you're somebody who's going to take the extreme risk of crossing the border, the deadly thing, potential human trafficking. I mean, it's just right. I mean, it's really dangerous to do any of that. That feels like the kind of decision that, to Lydia's point, is kind of already made more or less. Like, how much on the margin is that decision?
Yeah, I like I said, I think there was some misinformation just from having talked to a lot of my clients that they were going to have an easy time when they got here when Biden came in, right? That because Trump was over, that, and again, that had nothing to do with anything that Biden was even saying, right? That's just like traffickers and like TikTok videos and people putting this stuff out there that like, just give us money, we'll get you to the border and you can get yourself in. And, because again, with Title 42 ending and Remain in Mexico ending, and I should point out too that the things that they're mentioning here, I mean, the law really doesn't come up in the Daily Story or in this extremely long New York Times story. I did want to read one sentence here just to give you an idea of the way they talk about the law, which, I mean, this is like the Fox News take. The whole thing is the Fox News take. This is, I just, not that I expect that much from the New York Times, but
the Fox News take is the record now.
Yeah,
the victors, right?
The gray lady.
Everything.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Fox News is the gray lady. Yeah.
Aides stressed that the Biden administration faced a steep challenge addressing a border crisis while adhering to outdated immigration laws. Man, it's so hard to follow the law. But like, it doesn't matter that you think they're outdated. They're the law.
Yeah.
And the main thing we were complaining about with Trump is he just wasn't following the law. And he was finding ways around it and finding ways to abuse people and to, destroy due process. And Biden ended up being pushed into a situation where he had to do some of the same stuff. And I should also point out, the courts did not let him end Remain in Mexico for quite a while. Right. The courts actually stopped that 100-day deportation pause, which again, the deportation pause was to review the way that we're deporting people and why, and to make sure that we're not continuing to do a lot of the Trump stuff, including the very worst of what we're seeing right now, right, of deporting people with no records overwhelmingly, like people who have absolutely no reason to give it a chance here. But that deportation pause even was shut down by a court. Like he wasn't allowed to, and which is, I think, its own problem because the executive should have that kind of authority to decide they can.
Well, it's unitary executive when it's Republicans.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, but there's no Democratic unitary executive. Exactly. So there's just so many different factors here, including, again, just the way that Title 42 and Remain in Mexico had the interplay. But I sent you another thing here. Let's talk a little bit about what he actually did, because that barely gets acknowledged here. They brush off all the different solutions. And they did come up with quite a few pretty novel solutions, things that had not been tried before. So this is a very effective graphic, I think, for showing how well this actually worked. It
says parole policies immediately led to a reduction in border apprehensions.
U.S.
Border Patrol apprehensions and arriving paroled individuals for Cubans, Haitians, and Nicaraguans by month. So it is a subsection. Oh, but that's because that's who qualified for this. Right?
This isn't including Venezuelans, though?
This is not including Venezuelans. It's interesting. But this is helpful because Haiti was a big part of this. And a lot of the attention was on the Haitian surge. There were a lot of people who were living in Haiti in other places in South and Central America who faced a lot more discrimination and problems during COVID when the economy went down, because Haitians are discriminated against everywhere. And I've met a lot of those people that had already had gang violence and problems in Haiti, could not live there, ended up living in other countries, and then could not live comfortably there, were subject to all kinds of hate crimes and discrimination and problems, and then came up here, after the pandemic. So this was a real issue with a lot of Haitians coming at once. So this parole program was a novel thing. I'd never been tried before, but basically people could come and seek asylum and do it through an orderly parole process if they had a sponsor in the United States. And this is what people think this process already is. This doesn't exist before, but you can, people ask me all the time, like, can't I just sponsor an immigrant in another country and bring them here? No, of course you can't. That's not how it works.
So Biden makes something happen that has not been the case, that people think is the case. And so that's a perfect recipe for not getting any credit whatsoever.
Right.
Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah. And then same with the CBP1 app, which had its own problems, and we complained about it a lot, but it did require people who are coming here to register with this app, to register for an appointment, to do it in an orderly fashion so they're not just crashing the border, and then come over and have a chance to seek asylum. And this is all in the understanding that these people were going to cross the border no matter what. So you might as well give them a chance. And this stuff demonstrably did reduce
I want to make sure we have listeners. So can you describe what you're showing with the graphics, and maybe what the overall picture of the last 2 or 3 graphs we've done is?
Yeah, this is the overall we're looking at sort of Border Patrol encounters. And as I was saying, encounters kind of including both reapprehensions and apprehensions. The purple line there is apprehensions, and the yellow line is people who were paroled in legally, right? So you have a massive drop from December 2022 as the program's getting going. Wow. Into 2023, like into January 2023, you see that purple line of apprehensions goes way down.
It goes from 80,000 to 0, pretty much.
A month.
Oh, over the course of 2 months. Yeah.
And then the parole is like a pretty moderate sort of 20-ish, right? So you've got people that have a better option. People don't want to have to cross the border if they have a better option, who are able to come in that way, what people might call the right way. Because it is through an orderly process. Yeah.
This might be too much of a math question for you, Matt, but I am curious because the difference here between apprehensions and then paroled doesn't look like it's a 1-to-1. So is it that apprehensions is that like the recidivism that we talked about earlier? Is that multiple, folks multiple times and they're counting that, and paroled would be an individual person? Or is it that if some people have the option of parole, they just aren't bothering?
Or they're still being processed, right? Or
they're still being processed because it did take a while. So I think
this
you got a lot
is
of people.
apprehensions.
Right.
So this is like the idea of flattening the curve, right? Like when we're talking about like COVID and stuff, where it's like instead of everything happening all at once, it's we're going to get to you over time. We're going to spread that time period, right?
And there are a lot of people that wouldn't qualify, but that might give it a chance and would try to come through the parole process. And again, the idea isn't you're not going to eliminate it to 0, but you're going to severely reduce. And get those terrible pictures out of the media of, remember the Haitians being whipped on horseback, right? Because there's this giant group coming through, so it's a much more humane way to do it. And I should say too, when Ukrainians started coming here, and again, I have no problem with this, obviously, but when Ukrainians were coming to escape the Russian invasion, we immediately began a parole program and basically gave them the red carpet immediately across the border without having to have any of those problems. Yeah, which is fine. But I mean, it didn't look great. And it's not a good look when you've got basically white Europeans being treated with the red carpet and Haitians.
Differently than people of color,
Right. But in Haiti, it's some problems.
I have so many thoughts. Were there more things you wanted to say that Biden did?
Not from that business. Yeah, the parole programs, I think, were really important.
Yeah, a sane world would look at that graph and say, well, we should just do that for effing everybody.
That seems to work.
It took because that graph, just so, again, listeners and even viewers might not have noticed, it was a graph of just specifically Cubans, Haitians, and Nicaraguans, and it went from 80,000 apprehensions within a period of 2 months to near 0.
Yep.
So you would think a sane world would look at that and say, oh, just do that, but for everybody, essentially.
If people have another option, they're going to pursue that other option.
And those countries are especially important. I should point out, I just want to mention very quickly, sorry, that they're especially important not just because they were in real turmoil and they had a lot of people coming, but because those are countries we can't return people to. So once they're here, they're here.
That's important too. And no part of this reporting is what's happening to these human beings, what do they need, and what are the actual facts of what's going on here. It's only presented in horse race. It's entirely horse race. And it's something that I harp on a lot, but the big issue here is I feel like this is a New York Times brain thing that happens where their obligation is to report only what they can defend as facts. So you don't say the border is a problem, although I think they do actually say that. You're not supposed to say like the border is a problem. You're supposed to say, and critics said the border is a problem.
Right,
you know why?
right.
Because critics did say that. So that's fact. You can always say that's a fact. And so everything is presented in this way. Well, this didn't fix the problem because people still complained. Critics were saying this.
Mhm.
But and it's always presented in that. But that loses the point of journalism. I don't need professionals with millions of dollars in resources and the best reporters in the world to look on Twitter and tell me what people are saying. I don't need reporting on like, well, the critics over here said this and the critics over here. Look into the fucking border and tell me what's going on there and what would fix it.
Yeah.
And tell me how it's broken, who could actually do something about it, and how we could possibly get out of this. Give me actual fucking facts. Nowhere in this is because you could reframe this entire thing, and I don't know when to get to all this because there's so many thoughts. You could reframe the entire thing as how the Senate failed on immigration.
Oh, yeah.
Why is it on Biden? He had to follow laws because the law, as you point out, Matt, you got to follow the law or whatever.
Outdated laws.
Okay, why is the law outdated?
Right.
So if we hit play here, I think we can get just a sequence of just banger after banger, noting that we talked about the way they framed it. They framed Biden following through on his promises, not being a fascist, trying to follow the law, like Trump wasn't. They framed that as these failures that he's done. Like this is coming right back into that.
Put a halt.
Also, specifically trying not to deport children
for
Big on that.
100 days.
Right. And what followed from signaling a more welcoming stance toward migrants was, in fact, a huge surge at the border.
Yeah, it was a
Not
disaster almost immediately.
It was a disaster almost immediately. So before I hit unpause, now I want the next phase of this for me is I need someone to tell me, and I have a hard time when I ask these rhetorical questions because I'm not asking for the misinformation. I'm not asking for the lie. I'm trying to point out the error in the way they're framing this. Someone tell me what the problem is. Trademark. They will refer to the problem over and over and over. And I want to know what it is because I have a version of the problem. The version I have is family separation, migrants needing help. Mm-hmm. People being mistreated and talking about then, I guess in 2020 when a lot of people needing help, a lot of people suffering, the United States having an abundance of wealth and resources and plenty of room that we could easily handle and help people in the world. That's my problem. I get that doesn't exist. Nobody cares about that. What is another problem? Is it the overcrowding? Is it the facilities? Is it too many people in custody? Because if you want to frame, sometimes they use that as the problem, like overwhelmed, processing
infrastructure.
Centers. Yeah. But I don't believe that that's the problem. Trademark. No, the people who are angry about immigration aren't like, yeah, and immigration's bad because the migrants are crowded. That they don't care about that.
It's too cramped.
They don't care about the migrants. The problem, Trademark, is that there are brown people coming into the country. Yeah. That is the problem. But the New York Times can't say that. Right. They have to say it was a problem almost immediately. It was a disaster almost immediately. They never fucking say what that is. They just keep using this term, and we all know what that is, or I don't even know if they're aware of themselves doing that. But they just refer to the problem. And at various times it will be different things, because for a lot of the article, the problem is that politically it's unpopular that a bunch of people have lied about what Biden is doing. And that's the problem. But what the fuck do you do about that?
Yeah.
Does that have anything to do with policy?
As if Trump was not going to run on they're all criminals and they're all dirty, right? Like, of course he's going to run on that no matter what the situation was. But I just want to introduce a little bit of nuance before we go on. I sent you two more things. Check out this last chart here that I've just sent you, because I think this is also part of the problem, except it's a very good problem to have. Biden, in one way, was actually a victim of his own success. To the extent that the president has anything to do with the economy, Biden actually did a pretty good job of restarting the American economy after COVID, and Congress did too. But check out job openings in America. Obviously, huge spike throughout the Biden's administration. We had the U.S. economy picked up much faster than the rest of the world's, and the word got around that there's good jobs in America in a way there hadn't been before, and that was a part of it too. And it's true. I mean, it's certainly, I've seen, that they were having trouble filling a lot of these jobs. that my clients were taking. So that's part of it. And let's also look at the Congressional Budget Office, which is not a partisan institution. This is not like the House Democrats or House Republicans. This is just the Congressional Budget Office, which attempts to project what different policies and different circumstances in America are going to do for the congressional budget potentially.
I don't have another chart if you just...
That's the link just above.
Above it.
It's a PDF. And I just wanted to show you, because this did not get covered. If the New York Times had actually covered this, if the media had actually covered this information, I'm willing to believe this could have made a difference. If they'd given us these pieces of information about the jobs and about the projected economic benefits of this unprecedented kind of migration. And I'm not saying it was all good, but I'm saying that this should have been covered this way, because when you continue, as you're saying, Thomas, to talk about it as a problem, as an unqualified disaster, as something that we have to address and do something about, rather than looking at the potential benefits, because we do have unprecedented low birth rates. We do need more people in this country. It's just that these aren't the kinds of people that the New York Times wants. Yeah, so if you go down, right, in this report, CBO describes, second paragraph.
Let's have
budgetary effects. Oh, yeah, sorry. But read the budgetary effects part. That's the important part.
The increase in immigration boosts federal revenues as well as mandatory spending and interest on the debt in CBO's baseline projections, lowering deficits on net by $0.9 trillion over the 2024 to 2034 period. Some of the effects on the budget result from the increase in the number of people paying taxes and collecting federal benefits. Other budgetary effects stem from changes in the economy over that period that are brought on by the surge, including increases in interest rates and in the productivity of workers who are not part of the surge.
And check out the chart on the next part. Increases in revenues. Increases. Now, again, they're looking at federal, to be completely fair, and they're very clear about this. They're looking at federal revenues.
Yeah, I just want to make sure for listeners that it's the table estimated effects of the immigration surge on deficits. Okay. And sorry, when was this prepared again?
This is late 2024.
July 2024.
Okay. So it is like sort of getting toward the end, kind of getting like, okay. Yeah. And what are the numbers you want to pick out from this to illustrate for the listeners?
The decreases in the deficit, net effects, and then as you go down, there's also more about what they're contributing to the economy in terms of payroll and payroll taxes. Again, I'm not a numbers guy, but these are pretty good numbers. There's nothing catastrophic about this. I wouldn't call this a disaster. When you're talking about decreases to the deficit, over time. And this is accounting for federal programs for spending. Here we go.
And some of that's also related to the like Social Security taxes that they end up paying, even when they take Social Security numbers, from like deceased folks or whatever. Like they're still contributing to the economy in significant ways, like billions and billions of dollars.
Social Security numbers from deceased folks?
Immigrants, like if they have like fraudulent.
That does happen. It does happen. If you can't match a social with a known person, then it just goes into this fund that ends up paying for Social Security. Yeah. That also happens with ITINs, though, if they get a legal ITIN number, or if they just make up a number, which does happen sometimes. But check out the first paragraph here.
CBO estimates that the immigration surge will add $1.2 trillion in federal revenues over the 2024-2034 period. The annual increase in revenues grows over time and reaches $167 billion, or 2.2% of total revenues, in 2034 in the agency's projections. Individual income taxes and payroll taxes paid by immigrants who are part of the surge are responsible for most of the effects on revenues. In addition, the surge is projected to boost economic activity and, in turn, tax revenues.
This is not a partisan document. This is just attempting to look at the overall economic consequences of allowing a bunch of new people in and giving them work permits at a time when we desperately need workers. That's all it is. And we'll link to this document. People can pick it apart for themselves. But I guess I wasn't shocked, but I was not happy with how much this was not reported at the time. That, we
I've never heard of this.
Hard numbers here, that we're not going into an economic spiral. It's very much the opposite, because and again, whether or not you agree that these people should have come in, this is the effect. This is what it is. And this is accounting for the costs in federal spending as well. The states can and have complained, and some of that state stuff can be paid for by the federal government as well.
Okay, so we paused when it was saying it was a disaster almost immediately. And I started to say the problem. I want to know what the problem is. So let's listen to a few paragraphs here. And I just want everybody to imagine what the problem is that they're saying, that they never say what it is. Get some music first, of course. Make it more dramatic.
You could look at this as the first of a series of major miscalculations that the Biden team made on immigration, failing to anticipate the scale of the numbers. of the
But
people
they
who
didn't
were
because
coming.
they had that memo.
During the
So-
campaign and the transition, as they prepared for these scenarios, they said, let's plan around the idea that the number of people crossing the border once Biden is in office will equal the worst year or the worst month under Trump, and then just stay
Worst.
there. And the reaction to that proposal was, well, it could never get that bad. And sure enough, by March of Biden's first year in office, they had blown past
I just
the
want to
worst.
highlight the dehumanizing language of that.
Yeah.
The worst. It's a problem. The worst,
Yep.
the worst of the worst, the worst. Well, that's weird because Matt points out, now maybe in time they didn't have this report, but when this guy is doing this reporting, they have this report,
Yeah.
Matt, that you just highlighted. I'm really glad you pointed that out first. This is good for the economy.
Mm-hmm.
So this is good for the economy. It's good that if we are able to help people who need help, it's good that people who are fleeing potentially violence, murder, awful stuff, cartels, awful stuff. It is good if those human beings are not being killed in horrible ways or dying of in the desert trying to cross or whatever it is, the dangerous areas, being human trafficked. That's all good. What's the problem? What's the problem in quotes? It's so bad. It's so bad. Oh, it's that there's brown people. Like what else is the problem? And they just say it with the assumption. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I want to point out that it's exactly on what you're saying, that advocates really try not to use the word surge for exactly the same reason, because oceans surge, right? Like pandemics surge. People don't surge, right? That's just a faceless mass of brown people like you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
It's
exactly
really,
right on.
really dehumanizing, shocking stuff when you actually step back from what is apparently a universal shared assumption that migrants equal bad.
Yeah.
For why? I don't know.
Well, it's
economically they're good. I don't know. Like, so what is it? It must be something else, huh?
What's interesting is Chris Flavelle, the author for this, is an immigrant from Canada.
Oh.
So, just a white guy, though.
Yeah, a little bit different. So I'll let it keep going here for a minute.
Month of the first Trump administration. And then not only did it stay at those levels, it kept on rising. So even the people whose job was to think, well, how bad could it be? Turned out to be incredibly mistaken. They just didn't imagine the geographic and numerical scale of migrants who would try to reach the border.
No, I think people might say, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I have a hard time believing that. Like, there's a lot of very, very smart people who get involved in administrations, and to say like that they were that off, like, I don't know. I just have a very hard time believing that like they're going to be doing statistical modeling and stuff. They're going to be looking at a variety of things. I don't buy that rhetoric there.
Also, I just don't know how much it matters.
Yeah.
Like, they don't have options. The president isn't the person who's supposed to do stuff on this. That's Congress.
Right.
Who is so far absent from this. They're going to talk about it later, but Congress is supposed to pass the laws that affect this. We as a country, I get that the country is kind of fucked and we don't, but like the New York Times should be, rather than constantly staying almost one step ahead in supporting the fascists, they should be trying to remind us of how the system should work and how the appropriate response is Congress does stuff. They should pass a law.
Right.
They are way behind. Congress is the one not doing stuff. What could, if the reports told Biden that 1 billion people were coming, what the fuck is he going to do about it?
Well, the quote from the article itself, too, that Flavelle wrote was, and he, meaning Biden, failed to convince Congress to change immigration laws.
Of course. Yeah,
We'll
it's his
get
fault.
Yeah.
He
We'll
failed
get
to
there.
convince Congress. That's later. But
Yeah.
I feel like I have this issue where I have a lot of things in my head that I don't always communicate. Some people might respond to that question that I ask about the problem of, oh, well, it's really inhumane to have a bunch of people at the border and in these facilities and the way they're processed. I know that. That is bad. That is a problem. That's not what they're talking about. Because the problem that is presented is that people don't like this, that Americans, that white people, that voters don't like this. They don't give a fuck about the well-being of the migrants. So I know that you and I are thinking, well, it is a problem because we can't process them quickly enough to like help them. And it's the facilities that they get stuck in are bad like that. Yes, that's a problem. That definitionally can't be the problem that they're talking about in this article because they don't give a fuck about that. The voters don't give a fuck about that. The problem is the migrants themselves.
Well,
they are a problem. They're not humans. They're a problem.
And again, just to underscore that the proof is in the pudding, right? Like within the article itself, he writes, the perception of chaos began to erode the pro-immigrant sentiment.
Yeah.
Perception of chaos.
The perception of chaos.
That just happened.
Yeah.
Just happened. That we'll get to that. That's why I want to keep playing it because it gets amazing on
It's
that.
clear just how bad it is.
Just how bad it is.
What's Biden's response to the chaos?
Biden and his team were focused on responding to the immediate crisis of children who were stuck in Border Patrol stations that were not designed for them. And so their emphasis, their goal in the moment was to find something to do with these children.
Well, that sounds great.
Move them somewhere safe that
Sounds
made
like
sense
a priority.
for them. It was a real situation of trying to react to events and just sort of mitigate the damage. But there was no overarching vision of, well, what should the U.S. do on the border and securing the border?
Are you fucking kidding me? It's insane. You could present that in an entirely different way, which is, well, Biden, being a human being and not a fascist, was like, shit, let's try to do what we can in response to this event that we are not supposed to, the Congress is supposed to pass a bill.
Yeah.
That's what's supposed to happen, if anything.
And let's start with the most vulnerable people, the kids.
Right.
Like, let's try to help children, which apparently was his big mistake. And also, I want to point out, I really don't have time to get into this, but Mexico changed its policy on how it processed families coming back, and it stuck us with people that otherwise we would have been able to return. We weren't going to be able to return, and there's another whole issue there with how, and they're treating this as this is a unilateral American policy, as if this is not the Western Hemisphere working together here. Biden did eventually, one thing to his credit, honestly, to mitigate this. Again, I don't even really support this, but he put a lot of pressure on Central American governments, especially Mexico, to enforce their own borders more and to send more people back. And that's part of how we ended up with record numbers of low crossings by the time Biden gets no credit for that. But by the end of his term, he had like numbers we hadn't seen since the 70s for low crossings. Because of
they'll mention it, but they'll say, well, the damage was done.
Yeah, right.
That's what they'll say.
Sure.
This paragraph goes on in the same fashion.
You're describing
a
sort of paralysis from the White House.
Paralysis.
No real
That's
policy
not what
making.
Hold on. He just said a bunch of stuff they did.
The damage.
Am I crazy?
But there was no overarching vision.
He just said, well, he tried to save the children, essentially. Find something to do with these children, move them somewhere safe that made sense for them. They were focused on responding to the immediate crisis of children. So you're describing paralysis. What? What are you talking about? How is that paralysis?
Yeah.
It's just because he puts that sentence at the end, there was no overarching vision. So they didn't have a vision of fascism on how to end people wanting to come here or how to dissuade people from coming here. Right? What other assumption could be in his mind other than he didn't do the fascism? He didn't have an overarching anti-migrant fascism that made people stop coming here. That's what it is, right?
That is the framing. But I also want to point out, as somebody who was there and doing this the whole time, that they rededicated all of their interior resources. One reason that interior deportations were way down, not just because he was only focused on the most serious people, they redirected a lot of ICE and a lot of the asylum office to the border to try to do as much as they could. And the National Guard and JAGs and everybody else to try to process asylum claims as much as they possibly could. Like they were using the resources they had. Congress did not give them more resources, as you're saying. Like a lot of this comes down to allocation and what the law is. It's just this framing. Yeah, no, I'm glad you see it, Thomas. I really am. It's very encouraging.
This is why I listen to it 100 times. I get more mad each and every time. Apologies, but it's just fucking racism. Sorry, it just is. It's racism, and they're not even doing the thing of report. This is why it's so bad right now. It's not just that they're reporting in a neutral way about how a lot of people are racist. That would be one thing. If you're like, well, you got the racist on this side and they're racist and you got the non-racist, that would be one thing. It would still be like a both sidesing that I don't like. We've gotten to the point now where the racism is just ingrained. The racism is part of the reporting. It's an assumption. It's just an assumption from which they write the article.
Yep.
And then,
never addressed.
And then always leaving out the context of how media is perpetuating misinformation related to the border and immigrants and everything. Like that's never brought up, ever.
Yeah. The chaos. So I think we can skip quite a bit because it's about how no one was driving the bus. Nobody had anything. Nobody knew anything. And obviously the million-year-old guy wasn't the best president in terms of communication. And part of that, though, is also, again, it's always on Biden. The overall framing number 12 that I want people to look at is the amount that they write this article from the perspective that the asshole fascists doing misinformation and basically human trafficking, which we'll get to, in busing migrants, they're just going to do it. They're just doing it because they're doing it. It's on the responsibility of Biden to be the adult and figure out how to deal with that. There's no criticism of them. But it's almost written, they almost write about that in positive terms. Let's get to that. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, but also like don't break the law, but break the law. Like there's no right answer for Biden there from this perspective of this article.
Yeah,
absolutely. Let me find the good place here.
We're not in the good place, Thomas.
Let me find, because they lead to a cliffhanger for the commercial break that is just it's fucking amazing. So let me find the right place to go to start that. Okay, so we're gonna get the end of a bit of a thing here, more dehumanizing stuff about the surge.
And they hoped the same would happen again, but they were wrong. These numbers did not fade. Instead, the surge kept on getting worse and worse.
Okay, so the White House wants to be silent on this. They don't want to touch the issue. Remind us, what's the reaction among Americans, among regular people, to the waves of migrants that are now coming in?
What's the reaction?
The polling data shows a real
among
shift,
regular
and that
people.
Shift goes in
the people who count, the people who we consider people, the regular people. What's their reaction to the? It's like so fucking racist.
Opposite direction. It shows that more Americans are becoming worried about illegal immigration, and the support for migrants is falling, seemingly in response to this perception of chaos at the border.
Perception.
Who's responsible for the perception?
Out, right?
Who's responsible for the perception? They don't tell us. That is a great it was the media.
Where was that? We gotta highlight that again, just like you did. It shows that more Americans are becoming worried about illegal immigration, and the support for migrants is falling, seemingly in response to this perception. It's not even, they don't even have the guts to say, seemingly in response to this border situation. No. Seemingly in response to this perception of chaos at the border. Why is there a perception of chaos at the border?
It's peddled by Fox News, peddled by right-wing media, peddled by right-wing politicians when they're saying, oh my God, I've never seen it like this down here. I went down to a visit for the border and I was just blown away by how many millions of people were just standing there banging on to like the wall to get in. It's crazy. That was just lies, complete lies. So then you have people consuming that and thinking that it's true, that they can trust the media that they're consuming, that they can trust their politicians, and they shouldn't be because it's a lie. It's fake.
Yeah, and it gets worse here. So polling shows a real shift. Gosh, it's hard not to just play this part. I'll try to skip through a little bit, but support is falling, as we said. And then it says, and now you would think that polling data would be a red flag, but it wasn't because of still more political miscalculations. So there's no responsibility. There's no expectation of decency anywhere for the people doing the misinformation.
Right.
What we instead expect is we expect a president who's a Democrat to do a fucking impossible thing, which is to contend with the reality and to somehow, whatever you're doing with that, make it also change the unreality that people are being told. You can't do all of those things. You can't have a sensible policy. By the way, as a president, it's Congress. Congress is supposed to do it. Oh, why doesn't he just convince them to do it? Yeah, fucking jack off motion. Yeah, why doesn't he? I love that. Everybody, the far left does that sometimes too. Well, he's got to work with it. He's got to convince them. Fuck off. We know that doesn't exist.
The year's 2025.
Anymore.
We're not idiots.
It doesn't fucking exist. Anyway, he didn't do that. He couldn't convince them. And the responsibility is for him to somehow do something in a way that would change this perception, this mysterious perception. And that's just not possible. And it's just miscalculation after miscalculation. What the fuck is he supposed to do?
And all the media is doing is running video of people at the border, as Lydia is saying, standing there. Instead of talking about the context, instead of talking about all the ways that Trump was violating the law and how they're just trying to restore literally the rule of law at the border. That's what Biden was trying to do. And all the way through in this paragraph and all the way through this piece, they're saying, well, if only Biden had done the Trump stuff, just like you're saying.
Yep, that is absolutely it. Yep. Let's play this, because going into this commercial break is where I'm just really blown away.
You would think that polling data would be a red flag, but it wasn't, because of still more political miscalculations.
The only thing that matters.
The administration, the people around Biden, were worried that if they got more aggressive on the border on enforcement, they risked alienating Latino voters, who were an important part of the coalition that brought Biden to the White House. And beyond that, they figured that other American voters just wouldn't care that much. They thought that unless you live in a border state, this wouldn't be a real priority for you. And sure enough, that situation didn't last.
Here we go.
Because eventually Texas found a way to make it a problem for the rest of the country.
Because human trafficking is
this
clever.
This is downright
in April
heroic talk.
Yeah, it is.
Governor Greg Abbott of Texas figures out how to blow up this idea that Biden could ignore the border by starting a campaign to actually bus migrants from Texas to Washington, D.C., and effectively say to Biden and the Democrats, you cannot ignore this. We won't let you.
Unbelievable. unbelievable. That's glowing, like a glowing review. Now that's how you do politics.
Right.
That's how you don't do political miscalculation.
What a
Political
clever
genius,
Greg
Greg
Abbott.
Abbott.
Yeah.
Can you remind us, wasn't that fucking illegal? Like what, Matt, how did he even do that? Was he allowed to do that? But
Well, the DeSantis thing to Martha's Vineyard was like, you might remember when he flew a bunch of people. That was straight up illegal because they lied to them about where they were going. But there are a lot of people who were going other places who had friends and family to stay with, or they just handed them a bus ticket and just told them to, get on this, or just threw them on a bus, who knows what. And we don't have to play this next part, but he talks about how there's Venezuelans, Cubans, and Nicaraguans, I think, that are on the first busload. Again, people that admittedly, that Border Patrols admit, that we can't send back to their home countries. So we have to find something to do when they're here seeking asylum, especially Venezuelans at this point. I mean, come on. And Cubans. Like, are these not countries that we want to help people from? But yeah, no, the idea that uncritically, we're just reporting on how this was the thing that broke the camel's back, and this was what forced Biden to do something and to do the Trump stuff, like as if,
just imagine. Again, all in the name of journalism, there could be another way you present this that is still just as true, which is how one evil asshole's campaign to make people hate migrants worked.
Yeah.
And how simple it was to just a few buses.
Incredible.
Yeah.
And everyone fell for it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And these are people, again, who are coming legally, who are coming through a process, who are actually following a process and getting work permits and can work here and take jobs that are badly needed at this point. It is historic spike in hiring.
Well, and I didn't get to mention this point earlier, but another problem in quotes, right, that people bring up with immigrants is they're going to be taking housing from, citizens who live here. Well, the issue is the supply. And so you have immigrants coming in and actually filling construction jobs, which is going to help the supply, like that. They're not a problem. They're part of the solution.
Yep.
Absolutely.
But they don't have to report on the actual fucking facts of what goes on. They only have to report on the perceptions. And they can't even talk about where those come from. It's just background information.
Yeah.
It's just fucking killing me. I got to play this part when he goes through it. It's insane. I can't even believe it.
Describe this campaign, Chris, led by Governor Abbott, to bring this problem directly to Democrats' doorsteps and, as you said, make it impossible to ignore.
Describe this potentially illegal campaign.
What problem?
The campaign started with one bus.
What problem?
Yeah.
Genuinely, I'm flabbergasted right now.
It's people.
Because already
the
that's
problem.
how they get away with it. They shift what the problem is, because the problem was perception, right? A second ago it was perception.
Yeah.
But now he's bringing the migrants there,
the human beings,
so that you can't ignore the problem. But wait, no, that is the problem. Like, the problem is the perception. He's doing the perception. Now you're buying into their framing that there is a problem, and you're saying all this innocent, brilliant political strategist Abbott is doing is making them aware, making them unable to ignore the problem.
Yeah.
Just that one phrase, really, they just pack so much into it. And it's so disgusting. Where's my mouse? I'm trying to click play and I can't even find it. There it is. That's how mad I am.
In April of 2022, there was a bus that arrived from Texas to Washington, D.C. It pulled up near the U.S. Capitol. And we know from data we got from a public records request that bus was carrying 12 Venezuelans, 4 Colombians, 4 Cubans, and 4 Nicaraguans.
That's 24
and it was
people.
The start of
a problem.
What became
that's impossible
tens
to manage.
of thousands of migrants from Texas moved by bus over months and years to New York and Washington, Philadelphia, Chicago, Los Angeles, eventually Denver. And the result was really remarkable. You had
tens of thousands. I didn't know it was that much, Matt. Have you checked on that?
I don't know what the total number. And Florida was doing the same thing too. So
okay, we'll take it for granted that it's tens of thousands. It's not hundreds. He says tens. To New York, Washington, Philadelphia, Chicago, Los Angeles, and eventually Denver. What would you guess is the sum total population of those fucking cities?
Well, they're in ruins now, so who can know?
It's 11 billion people. The amount of people that tens of thousands is negligible. That's fucking nothing.
Yeah.
But then he goes on to say, and I'll try to get through it here without playing it. Oh, it's really remarkable. Now even governors in democratically held areas are saying, whoa, this is a problem. This is a problem financially. We've got to pay to find hotel rooms. Look, the best they do here is that one Democratic mayor, I don't know if you wanted to talk about this, but it's like, what is it, a Colorado guy or something?
Yeah, Denver's mayor. Johnston.
Is like, well, we had to put a lot of people in school. We had to put a lot of kids in school, right? Okay. But they only had to do that because of the busing, right? I mean, I don't, what would have happened to them without the busing?
Most people have a plan when they are coming here. And another part that I'm really not reporting on is how much of this was Western Hemisphere migration. There were so many people that did not come to the United States in the course of these migration patterns. People end up in places like Mexico and Costa Rica and other Central American countries, where they would be more welcome and speak Spanish and have jobs ready for them. But you're disrupting people's migration patterns when you're just like, here, have a bus ticket and try out DC, instead of maybe you're going to go sleep on your third cousin's couch for a while and try to figure things out. But, well, there must be something waiting for me in DC if they're going to send me there, right? Or there must be an opportunity. I've heard of New York City. I'll go there instead, right? But it's, and there were, during this period, there were people that were coming without a plan. I certainly did meet some of them, but that's unusual. Most people, when they migrate here, have somebody waiting for them.
And isn't there also not necessarily tons of federal money, but border states do receive federal assistance because of their exposure, like on the border and stuff, and the influx of people that might be dependent on their needs, on their infrastructure. So, that's something.
Very well-established welcoming infrastructure and communities and immigrant enclaves that are better prepared to take them than Denver might be.
So it's an artificial problem, right? I mean, I really, one thing I tried to ask you guys beforehand, and I asked the audience now is there some place where this really was an issue? And maybe there was. Like maybe there's some place that got hit with a bunch of people coming into the city or town or whatever at the same time. Maybe that would cause a problem. I'm not even 100% convinced that does cause much of a problem. That isn't evened out eventually by the fact that, the same people who come perhaps needing assistance will then be taking jobs, like working and contributing. Taking jobs that no one else wants. Like there's job openings that we can't fill at this time. So I'm not even convinced that it is a problem. Maybe I'd be open to the fact, and this is something that I would fucking love a reporter from the New York fucking Times to tell me. What was actually a problem? Tell me that. I'm open to it. I'm open to there's this one town got hit with so many people. Okay, let's solve that. How did that need to happen? And what was the solution? Was the solution fascism and separating families? Or was it, hey, direct a few dollars to that town to figure it out? I don't know. That's something I would love this reporting to be on. But no, it's all about perception and politics and who said what and who is maybe critiquing stuff. We can skip ahead a bit, but I do want to hit this part, and I'll try to find it here.
Cuba, Nicaragua,
I think I can move
Venezuela, that had made up a big share.
So Matt, then he goes on to the part where he does talk about a bunch of the stuff that Biden did, and it's kind of hand wavy.
Right. Yep.
It's like, well, he did do all this stuff and it made a huge difference, but still. Right.
But that's kind of right. But nothing was going to draw it to zero. Nobody ever thought this was going to go to zero. That was not the point.
Yeah.
So let's listen to how they frame this here.
Office, those numbers had fallen, but not nearly enough. They were still facing much higher crossings than when Biden first came into office. And this is where the pressure gets even more intense, because in February of 2024, that border bill that was moving through the Senate collapses.
Oh, why did it collapse?
Then candidate Trump tells Republicans to vote against it. So all of a sudden, Biden faces a real dilemma.
Hold on.
Why aren't we talking about that then, Chris?
Wait, this entire problem was Biden's failure. Biden's failure.
Yeah.
100%. There's this reform bill, the thing you actually have to do, the law. And that collapsed when President Trump, then candidate Trump, tells Republicans to vote against it.
Yeah.
That's not, that's fine. Well, that's just a given.
But listen, according to the lead Republican negotiator, this is in the article itself, dragging his feet on a crucial Senate border deal, who said the effort might have otherwise succeeded.
Oh my God.
Yeah, right.
That was in the article. You're right. That was in the article, not the podcast, because it's so fucking dumb.
Insane.
I don't think they're like,
they snuck it past.
Yeah.
Sure, they do all this to be sure stuff. That's my favorite.
And
to be sure,
unnamed lead Republican negotiator.
The Republican guy says, "Okay, Trump killed it." They essentially do. It's insane. That's the one part I did want to get to from the article. I'm so glad you brought it up. They literally do. Sure, Trump did kill it. He actually was the assassin who single-handedly ended the reform bill that is needed to fix the problem.
Mm-hmm.
But it's actually Biden's fault, because he didn't try to make them do it sooner.
Right.
And if he had, a Republican says, well, maybe we would have gotten it done, because if it was sooner, then Trump wouldn't have won a few primaries and he wouldn't have been as popular at that point, and he wouldn't have the power to do it.
The clear candidate, yeah.
Are you fucking kidding me? How many ways do you have to backflip to make this Biden's fault?
Yeah.
And not the thing that happened, which is Trump killed it.
As you and I discussed.
And sorry, man. And one more thing. Trump killing it and the Republican senators going along with it.
Yep.
It's also their fucking fault.
Yep.
Do they have no culpability for just, sorry, what's that? Citizen who's not an official of any kind, who's indicted right now, is going through a trial.
And not my constituent.
Fucking criminal. Donald Trump, kill the bill. Oh, we're killing it.
Yeah.
No responsibility there, huh? It's all Biden. If only he'd encouraged them a little more. That's the problem. Go ahead.
Let's not forget why, because as we discussed a couple of 100 years ago last summer, you and I, about opening arguments, Donald Trump killed it so that he could make sure that there would be more perception of chaos. He knew that bill might actually go some distance to changing the law. Now, again, I actually opposed that bill. I thought it was bad. But I do understand why people thought it would do some of those things. And Biden tried to illegally do these things through executive order later, arguably made it maybe slowed things down, but things were slowing down anyway, just because of extraneous factors and the way that Mexico is now enforcing, and also because the economy is improving in those other countries. And conditions too. I mean, the gang situation actually got a lot better in places like El Salvador. This idea, though, that somehow they could have just snuck it past Trump. If only Biden had allowed the bill to pass a couple of months earlier or whatever. And when Biden was specifically trying not to push it. Yeah, no, exactly.
To make that Biden's fault.
It's
it's incredible.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And that's where I said, okay, so the fascists are going to fascist. And the New York Times is like, yeah, that's going to happen. But the one person who should have done differently is this one guy who doesn't even really have the power to do much.
Yeah.
Because we want to hate Democrats. It's anti-Democrat. That's the main thing. I don't necessarily think that the people doing this, the reporters doing it, I don't think they're like Republicans. They just have an anti-left, anti-Democrat bias. And I do think they're anti-immigrant. I think that largely the stance seems to be, again, I think you can't write an article that where the unsaid assumption is that migrants are bad without thinking migrants are bad. I don't think you can do that. I think that if there was any of us in there, they'd be like, wait, sorry, what's the problem? What's the problem part? You should establish that at least in your article, like what the problem is.
Yeah.
So there's that. But like the idea that this is all, the Republicans in this article are the heroes of it. They really are. The fascists are the person who human trafficked migrants to different parts of the country that they didn't even necessarily want to be. That's the hero.
He's the smartest guy in the room. Yeah.
He's the one doing the good stuff.
He found the loophole, and we should celebrate that.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unfucking believable.
What you think of as the nuclear option, which is finally using the power that Biden had unilaterally of his own authority to effectively close the border to asylum applications, which he did in June of that year. And the thing that was amazing was it basically worked. The numbers plummeted almost right away. And so from a policy perspective, he had basically solved the problem.
Well, okay.
Yeah, Chris, help me understand this. I had this question at the time. I have this question now. Why did it take him so long to use executive action to do this?
Let's pause there. Why the aneurysm? Explain the aneurysm to folks.
Because they're about to say why he should have ignored the law earlier. Because we talked at the time in open arguments about how concerning this executive action was to basically end asylum, to, as they say, close the border to asylum applications, as if that's something that we should or want to be doing. But yeah, I think let's just let him say it. I can't even paraphrase.
I wanted to make sure to explain. So this is, people don't know this. Like, so
under
I think you got to
law.
Explain the lawyer thing. So he shouldn't be doing this, right? Like, what's the specific thing they're talking about in the executive action? And is it illegal?
So under international law and under, for what it's worth, our national law, you are allowed to seek asylum if you're in the United States, if you are within our borders. That's how it works. But they restricted asylum in and of itself to people who came through the CBP1 app or who entered through a port of entry. And that is flatly illegal. They did allow other forms of potential relief to people, but that's something that
so Biden eventually did, to clarify, a flatly illegal thing.
I believe so, and a lot of other people did too.
And now the question that these astute journalists are asking is, why did it take him so long to do that? Why did it take him so long?
He's even about to say it. I mean, he's about to say it out loud.
Yeah.
Ask 20 people, you get 20 answers, right? One answer that I got was they just didn't believe it was right. This was not in keeping with Democrats' principles about, respecting the dignity of migrants. They wanted to respect the law. They couldn't do it and wouldn't until they felt they had to.
They wanted to respect the law.
Yeah. So that's one argument.
Yeah.
That's a factor.
And
they weren't going to break the law until they had to break the law. Okay.
Here's another main way, and I'll try to be quick, as Matt is arrested. Another way that this kind of reporting kills me is that, yes, it is true that I think that taking a cynical view of politicians and figuring they're mostly doing what they are doing because they want to get elected, I get it. But when you do this kind of reporting, that's the only thing you're allowed to do. So you can list it among the reasons. You can be like, well, one reason is like maybe they didn't think they should break the law and blah, 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 you know, like maybe migrants are humans and some shit. Other things. And then they go on to emphasize, that's a quick aside. The quick aside is this is flatly illegal and migrants are humans. That's a quick one. Just get that one out of the way. What's next? Let's see. What are the other reasons?
Democrats' principles about, respecting the dignity of migrants. They want to respect the law. They couldn't do it and wouldn't until they felt they had to. Another argument is they wanted to give Congress every possible chance to do this on their own. And only when it was crystal clear Congress wouldn't do it, only then would Biden do this himself. Whatever it was, I think in hindsight,
could have been either of those.
What's clear is it didn't work. They waited too long to get any meaningful benefit from doing this.
Explain that. Where are voters on this? Why didn't it work? Why didn't it convince people that they were on the right track?
Can we avoid this maybe? I can. Yeah. Because he says it's just basically the calendar, blah, blah, blah. I know we've gone on at length. So that last part was fucking incredible. That was fucking incredible. He did a thing that was illegal. It solved the problem, but also it was bad because it didn't solve the problem.
I do want to highlight one thing he says here if we're not going to play it. He says, voters, to the extent they've been paying attention, have lived through 3.5 years almost of border crisis.
They have?
What? No, again, that's the media and right-wing politicians creating this perception of border crisis. They are living through a concocted reality that is not truth. It belongs in their mind, basically. That wasn't reality.
You're so right. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say they're also living through an unprecedented economic recovery, but sure.
Yeah.
You're so right because it says, and then they get back to the careful perception language. So that idea, that perception that Biden and Democrats favor open borders is cemented by that point.
Mm-hmm.
What passive language?
Yeah.
What passive voice? But note that they said, to your point, it's great to point this out, he attributes causation. He says, to the extent they've been paying attention, to the extent they've been paying attention, as though it is a real problem
being
only
an
if you pay
informed
attention
voter.
to it. Yeah.
Paying attention to us.
The reality is you shouldn't be fucking paying attention to that. There's a million other issues that are way more important. And if you should be paying attention, it should be to the human side of it and actually solving the problem.
Right.
No. They've lived through 3.5 years of almost of a border crisis. So he's making a causal link there.
Yeah.
So he's actually making a biased claim there that the problem of the border crisis is what causes this perception that Biden and Democrats favor open borders, which, by the way, this whole fucking time, none of this has been open borders.
Yeah.
This has all been about like apprehensions being higher. This is all like, and yet they're just going to say, well, the perception that's open borders is cemented. Nothing we can do. Nothing we journalists can do about this perception.
And you can tell that like he's absorbed some of that too, because the lived through, like that phrase, like we're in a war zone because of a border crisis, living through a border crisis.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
You know what we're living through right now is all kinds of economic turmoil because we're just rounding people up, workers, and deporting them in massive numbers. Like, what is that doing to our economy versus what the new set of workers meeting an unprecedented demand and meeting an economic boom like we've never seen? Like, I think something like 50 years, like that first year of Biden. And again, he was, he gets some of the credit because he's coming back after COVID and we had a big downturn and, whatever. But the idea that it was an unprecedented disaster or that somehow that the nation was falling apart when it was very much the opposite economically.
And I think you can tell because of like how much, like when you poll and stuff on this, how severely it shifts from one side to the other for voter sentiment regarding immigration, that like we are really really susceptible to how this stuff is portrayed in the media because we are flipping every single time.
And perhaps it's not a logical response.
Right.
We have to get to the finale, the amazing... this is mwah. I can't, and this is, by the way, this is narrator voice asking this. So this will be narrator voice. So this is God voice. This isn't the reporter. This isn't some opinion columnist. This is narrator voice. Let me
foundational skittishness remained.
Oh, that was this.
I want to just talk
Here we go.
about
I don't even have to cut.
everything you've told us. It is
Here we go.
really hard to overstate the significance of it, the
Yeah.
significance of the fallout
Are you
of
ready for
Biden's
this?
miscalculations
Yes.
on immigration. Obviously, it led to Trump's return to office
Yep.
in part, and that
Sure.
has totally transformed the country. But there is this potentially deeper, longer-lasting impact that you point to in your reporting, which is that it actually helped lead to this rightward shift
Fuck
in the American
you.
public's
Yeah.
views
Fuck
of
you.
immigration.
We're just now
Can
stepping
you
into the rightward
describe
shift.
that for me?
No,
And just help me
unbelievable.
understand how durable.
The only person with agency in the world is Joe Biden.
Yeah.
He's the only human being who has agency, who we can expect stuff of. Fuck you! I can't believe it.
Yeah.
I'm dying over here. Now he's to blame for the rightward shift,
Yeah.
guys.
Yep.
It's not that there was a concerted effort by billionaires and fucking racists to make there be a rightward shift.
Yep.
It's not that Trump killed
And
the
technocrats, yeah.
reform bill. Literally, they say he killed the reform bill. It's not that. No, it's Biden's miscalculations that also are now to blame for this rightward shift. Fuck you. God.
In the New York Times story, they have a picture of Trump speaking in front of one of those big signs about criminal migrants, like doing his criminal migrant. And they quote him talking about poisoning the blood and all the other racist stuff they were talking
Yeah.
about, which they would have done no matter what Biden
Biden's
had
fault.
ever done. Even
Yeah,
if
no
Biden had
matter
done
what.
all of the same Trump policies, they would have said it was a disaster. They would have said whatever they were going to say.
Unbelievable. I can't get over this. This is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Horrible.
Was there anything else here? Anecdotally, the unease has softened a bit, and those numbers have receded. To your point,
Yeah.
he's like, well, it's already, the sentiment's already better again.
Yeah.
Weird. I wonder why that is.
Because maybe we can't trust the sentiment of Americans when it comes to this particular issue. Because
Actually, yeah, we need to listen to this answer. It's short, I
Yeah.
promise. But listen to this.
You think that shift is?
The honest
She
answer,
asks
of course,
how
is no one
durable.
knows how durable that shift is. There is polling data that has come in since Donald Trump came back to the White House showing that some of the intense unease about immigration that really spiked by the end of the Biden years, that unease has softened a bit, and those numbers have receded to sort of the pre-Biden levels. But
Wow.
what that doesn't account for is anecdotally and based on conversations with people who work on this, there seems to be a real sense of lingering anger among American voters, Democrats, Republicans, the sense that people remain collectively a little bit scarred by what they saw when Biden was president.
that's
The question
nuts.
you're pushing on
Fuck
is,
you.
The PTSD of it all.
Look, the numbers say. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say it's really interesting because before he stepped into covering Trump more broadly, he was on the climate beat and like won awards related to like environmental journalism and stuff. And so sometimes that intersects, of course. And like he had some really important reporting during the Texas floods and the fall of FEMA, right, and all of that kind of stuff. But now he's moving into this broader Trump administration, and I just feel like it's like too big for his britches kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't know how to account for this,
Yeah.
honestly. What do you think, Matt? Do you think it's
I've-
just bias or what?
I think the New York Times is really intent on giving Donald Trump the narrative that he wants about Biden. I think that's really a big part of it. I think that there's an audience of one factor here, that they're trying to keep him happy. They're trying to keep the administration happy the best they can. And this is exactly the story that Trump wants.
Man,
Not get sued.
I don't want to start a big debate at the 2-hour mark, essentially, but I actually think they truly believe this. I actually think their point of view is just my theory. I could be wrong, but I really think the main problem they suffer from is a feeling that Democrats are the only ones with agency who need to do everything right. Otherwise, the fascists get to control the country, and it's Democrats' fault.
Right.
And they're not trying to change the right's behavior.
Mhm.
They're not doing an article about how the right fucked this up.
Mhm.
They're just talking about Democrats. It's a way to look neutral. Like, that's why Democrats have it so fucking hard, is because the right hates them and the left hates them and the center gets to hate them. Everybody's incentivized to hate on Democrats.
Yeah.
It's just, there's no incentive to do otherwise. There's no incentive to defend Democrats at all, anywhere in the political spectrum, except maybe like some centrists or something. And it's a way for them to present this all as them reporting about perceptions and reporting about just things people say. And what this doesn't account for is anecdotally based on conversations with people who work on this. What do you mean people who work in this? Because we're talking about the public. What about people who work in this? What does that even mean? So he's talking about political operatives.
Yeah.
And
Policy folks,
it's their theory. And by the way, all this is the funny thing about this is, wasn't the number one issue the economy? Was it even this? I mean, I know this is part of it. I'm not saying the border wasn't part of it, but like, it's another big leap to be like, this was the singular issue that Trump went on. Yeah. Right? I mean, inflation, I think, was really the problem. And the
affordability crisis, right?
Yeah. Like, I mean, I've looked at the polling, and I mean, it's sure the border's part of it, but it's not. I don't think it's that much of it, because the people,
it's probably top 5 though, don't you think?
Well, yes, but if number one is 80% or something, then it's, I'm not sure. Like, I think inflation, and when you look at the voters who actually change their minds potentially, either by switching votes or staying home, I think the key is going to be the fact that inflation, like, stuff costs a lot. They don't pay attention to the news, and gas prices were X and sandwich prices were X, and it was high.
Yeah.
And that, like, the depressing analysis seems to be that, like, that honestly kind of just does it. Like, incumbents, as we've said a million times, suffered all around the world, and Harris had better numbers than incumbents worldwide. And it's just, but doesn't matter, because we get to rewrite this history as Biden's fuck up on the border. It's just fucking incredible. 10 out of 10.
I mean, but the editorial staff at the New York Times has to bear the responsibility, because I mean, I can imagine the meeting, right, where they're sitting around like, hey, we haven't talked about the Biden border crisis in a year. Let's go back and take a look at that. When, there's another story, as we've been saying all the way through, and we've all been talking about how the other story that could have been covered here, about how, hey, let's look back and see what the real causes of what that perception was, right? Of what that chaos was. Or actually, hey, let's look at the economic effects of having let all those people in, because those are right there for you too. Democrats did a terrible job of telling that story, no doubt. But, or also even better, let's look at the economic effects of yanking the work permits and parole from all these people that we just brought here, because we're effectively now removing their ability to work legally. We're going to put them in desperate situations from Haiti, Venezuela, and everywhere else. We're going to remove the work permits. We're going to deport all of these workers. I don't see anybody talking about that. We're just hung up on what Biden did wrong. So yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, but there's so many other ways to tell the story, and I just hope that maybe some responsible journalists at some point might be motivated to get into those questions.
Yeah, you could tell it from the state point of view of the Senate and of the failing institution there. That is there. We're criticizing a guy whose job it isn't to do this.
Mm-hmm.
To your point, the ultimate thing that they want him to do was an illegal executive order they shouldn't have done.
Mm-hmm.
And the part where Congress just abdicated, well, that's in the background. Why isn't their failure responsible for the fascism? Nope, it's only Biden's failure.
And it was not just illegal, but it was one of the Trump policies, exactly basically a copy of the 2017, 2018 Trump policy on asylum that stuck through that administration, that he was trying to get away from because he knew it wasn't right. But,
And they have a chance at the end. They have a chance because they say, well, that's weird because you say it solved the problem entirely and things were great. And she literally asked, like, so then what are we doing here? Why didn't that work? Well, it's too late in the day.
Yeah.
It's like, well, why? Why isn't that? You have one more chance to be like, yeah, isn't it weird that reality didn't affect how voters feel? Because that's the main fucking problem of all of this that I say over and over. Voters are not connected to reality.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Too many voters, too many people are not connected to reality. So we do all this stuff where we're trying to change reality. We're trying to actually work in the real world and do stuff in the real world. And then we're like, why isn't this working? I don't understand. And then we make up shit that isn't it. They can't just say, yeah, well, the problem is there's a misinformation network fueled by billionaires, fueled by Elon fucking Musk, who campaigned on illegals voting. He went on the Joe Rogan show right before the election and said, you won't have a country anymore if Trump doesn't get elected. Because why isn't it about him? Why isn't he responsible for the fascism? Nope, no responsibility. It's just Biden for not doing things that he eventually did do, actually, that he shouldn't have done anyway. Fuck off. God. It's what fucking world do we live? Okay, how do we get out of this?
Well,
we
need to close out with patrons, and I have a baby here, so
I'm going to angrily yell at the patrons.
I literally have
for thanking us for feeling us, and we're gonna have to get out of here.
And we'll have to save the federal space for another time.
Yeah. Let's thank our final batch of patrons. The Cincinnati Kid. We had 2 sick kids at home trying to navigate that. It's amazing that they did this well for this long. Sorry about that. Hopefully the edit will work. The Cincinnati Kid, blah, 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 blah podcast. Philly Basement Bar is busy organizing. Elect Thomas Smith President, American Honky Tonk Bar Association, Baltic Ate, Philip Kaiser. There's nothing worse than having a Cranberry song stuck in your head, That's awesome. I'm glad that I got to read this so I could do that. Corin Land, a string of unpronounceable characters. Malika Chandler, Milo Mead Song is Fighting Petty Tyrants. RondaTheDork.com, Hors d'oeuvres in the court before we report. Big Easy Blasphemy, Chris Waltrip, Fred Grothius, Classic Libtard, and Mitchell. Thank you so much, patrons. That cheered me up already. They make the show happen. Patreon.com/law. If you want to support people who are not fucking enabling fascism with their fucking journalism from their billion-dollar companies, and they're like making all kinds of money and using resources for the shittiest reporting imaginable, maybe pledge on Patreon.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Matt and Lydia.
Yeah,
and
of course.
Listeners.
And thank you guys for your righteous anger. I do appreciate it. It fuels me too.
As Matt is someone who, due to congenital defect, is not able to display anger. So,
translating very well.
Those are the two. He doesn't have the math gene or the anger gene. We're here to provide both. This has been Opening Arguments, produced by Thomas and Lydia Smith, with editing help from Peter Baird. The intro is by Thomas Smith. This outro is by Matt Cameron. Support the show at patreon.com/law. Contact us through Patreon or openarguments@gmail.com. Make sure to follow our Blue Sky @OpenArgs. But most of all, please share the show. Thanks for listening.
Inchoate. Is that how you
that
say
here
it?
again?
No, it's not. But it's like my fear now that it's going to show up randomly and I'm still going to get it wrong.
You got it.